fair and reasonable to suggest that the baseball club could be run a whole lot better than it is. But way too often we're pointing to the wrong stuff. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and/or hockey, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins in the same place that you found this. It's about baseball operations. It's about internal baseball operations, meaning how do you produce and acquire and develop and instruct and nurture your own talent that you got. Because in an unfair economic system, and Major League Baseball very much has one of those, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. This is the one facet of the operation that isn't optional. You can miss here or there. You can miss on a trade. You can miss on a free agent. You can't miss when it comes to drafting players, acquiring them through Latin America or other international pools. And then once you do get them, you can't miss in the most general sense in getting them to the majors. And then once they get to the majors, you can't miss again in a general sense on being able to keep them there, having them succeed there. Can you miss on an individual? Of course. The general rate, as I've been told by many people in the industry, this is not anything that requires research, is that if you hit on 3 guys in a given draft class, this is just the draft now, which for anybody who doesn't know only encompasses United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. If you get 3 out of a class, you've really nailed it. 3 major leaguers. Well now, let's say that you're the Pirates and you pick a lot earlier in the draft than most teams do. And let's say that you've also outspent every team in baseball on the draft over the past 15 years. And let's say that an outfit called Stats Muse that does independent and somewhat arbitrary research, meaning they just pick a subject and they go ahead and research it. They came up with a 10-year survey of how all 30 teams carried themselves in the draft. And what they did was they applied the only metric that anybody should ever apply to this. It's not how many hot prospects, how many up-and-comers do you have, how many guys is Baseball America excited about. Who cares? Who cares? They either make it to the majors and succeed or they don't. And a fair timeline for that is 10 years. Because it takes a while in baseball. It takes a good 3 or 4 years, even for your good guys, to make it through the system. So, 30 teams ranked by cumulative FWAR. And I'm going to tell you what FWAR is. WAR is wins above replacement player. Okay? And that is exactly what it sounds like. If you take somebody who's just a normal ball player, this tells you how much better they are than a normal ball player. Or if they're the same, then they're just a 0 when it comes to WAR. F, all that stands for is Fangraphs, which means everybody's got their own version of WAR. This one happens to belong to Fangraphs. So they take FWAR, which is a cumulative stat, and they add it up over 10 years. If, for example, you are a 2.0 WAR player, you're worth 2 wins per season above a replacement player, and you do that for 5 years straight, then you are a 10 WAR player because WAR is cumulative throughout your career. You've been doing it a longer time, you're more valuable. You've brought more value. Now, I know as you're listening to this, you're just going, well, just say it. Just say it. Where are they? Out of 30 teams, your Pirates rank 27th in FWAR when it comes to the draft. Their figure, the FWAR figure, is 22.9. The second lowest team is 20.4. The very lowest, man, they have problems. So the Rockies at 9.8. Now, if you want to know what the positive figures are on this, I'm going to repeat that the Pirates are at 22.9. The Astros are at 110.4. The Cardinals are at 92.8. The Guardians are at 83.0. The Orioles are at 76.5. The Dodgers are at 76.5. The Rays are at 74. You get the idea. There are teams that are good at this. There are teams that are kind of okay at it. There are teams that are bad at it. And then how did Billy Bean put it in the movie? Then there's 50 feet of crap or something. And then there's us. That's what this is. That's what this is. Now, 10 years obviously also means that you're including half of those years being Neil Huntington years. And when you look at the draft classes in there, when you look at the first rounders, you look at a Quinn Priester, you look at a Travis Swaggerty. These are guys that they made it, but they really didn't make it. They didn't have much of an impact in the majors. And I'm going to repeat that is the only thing that should be counted here. The only thing. I don't care if they owned AAA. I don't care if they were the Indianapolis Indians player of the century. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what you do when you get to Pittsburgh. But now I'm also going to repeat that the Pirates picked early and spent a ton of money. In the Cherington era alone, the 5 picks that he's made have been, meaning the top picks, were 7th overall, 1st overall, that of course being Henry Davis, 4th overall, Termarr Johnson, 1st overall, Paul Skeens, the one nobody could miss, and 9th overall most recently with young Connor Griffin. And from this group to date, what the Pirates have gotten is what anybody would have gotten, meaning Skeens. They've gotten whatever it is that anyone can reasonably expect out of Nick Gonzalez in the long term. I happen to believe in the kid a lot more now than I did a year ago. And they've had one terrific pick in Jared Jones, who was not among these first rounders, by the way. And the rest, jury's out. Again, don't want to hear about Bubba Chandler. Don't want to hear about anybody who's in the minors currently, including, by the way, Johnson. You're measured by what you do in the major leagues. So I will put out here that it is possible that the Pirates could have, some great recent drafts, that Griffin will be the shortstop of the future, that Gonzalez will continue to take a grip on the second base position. I don't know this, but you can, hold it out there. What you can't do, what you shouldn't do, is gloss over what the real problem is with this organization. The dollar figure that's been attached to the money that was spent on these 10 draft classes is $103 million. $103 million. And this is what you have to show for it. You also, as long as you're at it, can go back just over the past 5 years and the international money that's been spent. That's $35 million over 5 years. $35 million. And you know what the Pirates have? In the system, never mind in Pittsburgh. They have nothing in Pittsburgh to show for this. In the system, they have almost nothing up and coming. So put those two figures together, it's $138 million plus other international spending in the last 5 years under Neil Huntington, which produced very, very little as well. That's money that if the Pirates had ever put that same money from the same wallet, from the same owner, into a free agent, people would be, or even multiple free agents, 6, 7 free agents, people would have been ecstatic. They would have been like, this is the greatest thing. It's so awesome to have a guy like this running the team. But this is what resulted. This is what resulted. When we come back, J1Q.
It's Gun Storage Check Week. Help prevent unwanted access to your firearms. No one wants their unsecured gun to be used in an accident, a suicide, or a crime. Use lockboxes, safes, and locks to secure your firearms. Learn more at gunstoragechek.org. That's gunstoragechek.org. Brought to you by NSSF, the Firearm Industry Trade Association.
Abandoned ship, Bob. Sell the team. Are Are you a Pirates fan who is angry or apathetic about our perennial losing baseball team? Do you feel helpless because you don't know how to make a difference? Well, good news. We have something you can do about it. Join our Sell the Team movement. We're a group of passionate fans voicing our frustration and demanding change through billboard campaigns, press outreach, protests, and involvement at local city government meetings. Go to ourteamnothis.com to get involved.
Today's J1Q comes from Russ, and it's in reference to the Henry Davis episode that I did earlier in the week. Russ says, DK, why don't the Pirates just get him away from catcher and put him in right field? This isn't a hard concept. There's a reason that most catchers don't hit. It's a very stressful defensive first position. Let him only focus on hitting. Okay, that sounds like a decent idea in a vacuum, Russ. And I'm sure that over the long haul, any player would have an easier time, adjusting their overall baseball workday to playing a corner outfield spot versus behind the plate. Catchers, and this is especially true under Ben Cherington, where he obsesses about defensive tendencies and qualities in catchers. They spend a lot of time in the lab. And by that, I mean sitting there with Oscar Marin and the starting pitcher for that night, and others, from, analytics and other instructors and video guys and everything else. And when it comes down to hitting, it's almost like an afterthought. So you've got to be at least decent at it in order to have it be an actual afterthought, something you can do without the same amount of prep time that other players get. Sounds good, right? Okay, now you remember Henry in right field. Okay, you remember that this management team brought up Henry after he had played basically only catcher in the minors. He'd had a couple of fun little flings in the outfield, but for the most part, he'd been a catcher. And that's all he was at Louisville. And that's all he's been most of his life. But he comes to the majors and they say, well, we're going to put you in right field. And he had not really done this before. And it showed. And at times it showed painfully. And even beyond the number of games that were lost because he was out there, and man, he really struggled, and he did influence entire games. You're taking a number one overall prospect and you're messing with him. And at the time, it was over a positional shortcoming. It wasn't even because you thought Henry stunk behind the plate. It was because this is just like the no-no of all no-nos when engaging in a full rebuild. And there's no way to describe what the Pirates attempted from 2020 onward other than a full rebuild. You get a number one overall guy and you throw him in right field. I mean, do you also want to have Paul Skeens take some grounders at short? How about if he throws an inning or two left-handed just to see what he's got? But that's what happened with Henry. Now, did that prevent Henry from hitting? No, I'm not going to go that far. The line of demarcation for Henry between AAA and the majors is so stark that I have a really difficult time believing that having a handful of games in right field in which, he became justifiably red-faced wasn't going to be the kind of thing that was going to torment him or set him back meaningfully, but it didn't help. It didn't help. The organization showed in its own ways, plural, that it didn't have confidence in him as a catcher. Do you remember how late in what had long since been a lost season, this was 2023, they refused to put Henry behind the plate? Like it could be 15-0, and Derek Shelton wouldn't put him out there for even an inning or two. This was in September. I mean, this is exactly when you would have wanted to see him out there. Win or lose, dynamite or disastrous. So can you take some of that as a hit? Sure. Could that affect other parts of your game? Sure. But again, I'm not going to take it to the extreme that, yeah, they put him in right field and therefore he can't hit in the majors. And on a similar note, I'm not going to make it as simple as, well, if they put him in right field now and they just let him go ahead and learn that as a position, then he'll become a better hitter. He just needs to become a better hitter. And I don't care in the long term if that comes at the expense of catching or whatever. You have a number 1 overall pick. And he is a number 1 overall pick principally, and this was known at the time, for his bat, meaning he was never seen as some sort of excellent defensive catcher. He just had the 80 grade arm. He didn't have the other things at the position that you'd want. So you're drafting him 1-1 because of his hitting potential. He has to be able to hit. And anything else and everything else, that can go right ahead to suffer for it. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody checking out Daily Shot of Pirates. We'll be back with another one tomorrow.